not Cherie. Robin, can you do the karakia for us, please?
Thank you. Mai iti pamonga raro kiti tai, mai iti awatonga raro kiti awe raki, tene e te hapori, awhi ai taratahi, whano, haere mai te toki, homi e, hui e, taeki e.
Thank you, Robin. Claire asked for apologies. I think we've got a couple.
Rebecca Vergunst and Charmaine.
Okay, so you're moving those. I'll second. All those in favour, please.
And one more.
Sorry, there's one more. Marty Sabaya as well.
Marty, okay. Thank you.
And Richard Keys.
Russell Keys.
Council Keys.
He's not a commission
He's not on the
member.
committee.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, it's all right. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Right.
Carried. Right. Just before we go on, technically we've got a late item from Dave in terms of the Three Waters report, which Three Waters review update. So we probably technically need to receive that as a late item. I'm happy to move that we receive that as a late item. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that by Robin.
Rob, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Right. Any conflicts of interest for items on the agenda? None. Public forum. I don't think we've got any public forum on, although this is being recorded. Confirmation of our minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held 12th of May. Any comments, corrections? Morning, Brian. All right, no comments. Do I have a mover for those adoption?
I'll move.
Thank you. Dale, I think. Dale?
Robin will second.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Our first report, 6.1, is project review of clock tower and wastewater reservoirs, page 12. Dave, have you got any comments, additional information? Take the report as read.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is sort of got handed this one from our interim CE, so I will take any notes and any direction from the committee.
Thank you.
Philip, just one question I had under next steps, and Jeff will be retaining the service or obtaining the services of an independent party for the review. Can I just ask that it be advertised or made known locally as well as further afield? I am aware there are people locally who might be interested in putting their names forward for a review like this. Now, I wouldn't say that they'd be independent or anything like that, but I just wouldn't like us to be appointing somebody and then have locals say further down the track that they didn't even know it was available. So if we could just make sure that it had some exposure locally, that we were going to the market for that particular contract.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Dale, that we should at least tender it so that, you know, we are using public money, and I think that advising the market and getting expressions of interest is the right way to go.
Yeah, I probably agree with the expressions of interest or registration of interest, and then appointing from those registration of interest with it. And then you'd be looking at the independence as a criteria, and also track record or something like that, experience with those projects or whatever the focus is.
Well, I mean, I just, you know, looking at it, the budget's only 15,000. Well, the heavy hitters that normally do reviews, they wouldn't even fill in the application for 15 grand. So it's you know, more likely to be perhaps a level below the normal suspects in this sort of role, I would have thought.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, totally, yeah, and I think 15, it'd be interesting to see in terms of the budget, whether 15,000 is adequate. You know, I'm saying yes, the heavy hitters probably wouldn't tender for it, but do we actually want the heavy hitters anyway? And probably most of the heavy hitters are actually looking at particularly the wastewater, probably donkey deep in the Three Waters review stuff. So,
And also, Dale, that the review is up to the completion of stage 2 of the project for the wastewater treatment ponds.
Yeah, and I think you know, and I think the budget reflects that. We don't want to turn this into a post-mortem and ending up bigger than Texas. You know, that the clock tower project is complete and the wastewater is tracking. So, you know, we're fulfilling a promise that we made, but we just want to keep it, you know, appropriate for the state that we're in right now.
I particularly like the wording under the review scope, that less useful reviews are those that use hindsight to identify what went wrong. And I think that's actually a really important statement.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, to me, you've actually got to look at the decision that was made with the information that was made at the time, and was that information also at that decision a good decision with the knowledge of the information, or the information that should have been available at the time, rather than looking back and saying, oh, we found this and everyone should have been aware of it, but in hindsight, at the time, there was no way you could have actually known about that issue. And that's the problem when you're actually looking with hindsight. You sort of sometimes blink it with that knowledge that you've accumulated over a period of time.
Just follow up with regards to the commencement of the review. It's Greg here. We should not engage in the tendering process until stage 2 is actually finished of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade.
So, Jeff, you're on mute.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right, Greg. We need to complete the work on phase 2, stage 2, and undertake a review once that's been complete, because then we've got the full facts for anyone who's doing that review work. Yeah.
So our recommendation, when we move to recommendations, will just need to be amended to reflect that.
Yes. And therefore we may not meet the November deadline for finishing stage 2 and the review by November.
Yeah.
Acknowledge.
I wonder though, Philip, if we can go through the process of expressions of interest and so forth, but that the successful person begins the scope of work on completion of, so that we've actually got it underway, and as soon as stage 2 is finished, that person or organisation, and even in the interim, they can be gathering information and making sure they have everything at their disposal in order to, complete the review in a timely fashion, I would have thought.
Dale, that's very scary, because I was going to suggest exactly the same thing. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no use totally. I mean, the chief executive can get on and identify the people, sort of get them to do the pre-work, but they actually really start once stage 2 is actually completed. And so just for obviously we've got a little bit of a delay now with what's happened last night. So when were we expected to finish stage 2?
I'll let you answer that, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress. There are a few things happening in the background, Philip, that we will update in a short while. But we're just really looking at whether there's going to be a winter holdover. So it's still negotiating. Okay. So that might be the problem that we strike if we have a winter holdover.
Okay. Maybe what we can do is just have a bit of an update, Jeff, at our next November meeting, to say this is who we've engaged, this is the process, and this is where they've got to.
Okay.
I think just to keep the committee formally informed, so also the community understand what the issues are about why the review is taking so long. I think it would be useful from a transparency perspective.
Yeah, well, that point 2 under recommendation can stay the same. It just put in perhaps progress report brought back to the next audit and risk committee meeting.
Yep.
Rick?
Okay. So any further discussion?
Yeah, I wouldn't say progress report.
Yeah.
Because that actually, if you read the wording of it, that'll sound like that's a progress report from an independent reviewer. So I think maybe the recommendation would be agrees that an independent review of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and clock tower earthquake strengthening projects be undertaken as set out above, and that's a full stop.
Yeah.
And then I think the wording, your advice, Jeff or Philip, that
Staff update us at the next meeting.
yeah.
Yep.
Philip, can I butt in there? Brian here.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian.
Hey, just a general comment. I'm a little bit concerned that getting into these reviews at this stage, basically all I can see is that we're going to pay somebody to tell us something that we already know. That would be my question. The other thing is I'm just thinking about possible ways of getting over this, that future review costing should be actually included in the original contract pricing and part of the contract. So I'm just questioning the value of spending a lot of money now on a review. And I know we have told our ratepayers that we will do this, but I just question the dollar figure. Thanks, Phil.
Okay. I just in terms of, and I won't talk dollars, I think I'll leave that up to Jeff and Dave to talk about. My view is, I think I agree with you that we shouldn't actually include as part of a contract in subsequent projects, but we should actually allow in the contract, in the project budget for large projects, a review of what could we improve, what are the learnings that we can actually go forward with. I think that to me is the real value of such a review. It's, look, what's been done is what's been done. And as we note in the report, it's not about looking at hindsight, saying is what could we actually do better going forward with other projects. And I think this is, I've seen this in other committees, that where there was a roading project doing a roundabout and there was a review undertaken, cost a little bit of money, but they said having done this review, these were the lessons that we learned that we didn't think about at the time, that we've now documented. So when we do a similar project, we'll take those learnings on board so we actually have a more efficient project. And that to me is where you get the value of the spend. It's not saying is we should have done that, and that's where the matter lies. It's about what could we do better when we have other projects, and what are the learnings from the projects. Jeff, do you want to comment? Dave?
I agree. I think a post-mortem on what happened is not at all useful. I think the start of the section 4 talks about the identifying cost-effective practices that, if used on future projects, would reduce the risks from the things that we've found. And if we look at the use of the construction contract 3910, that has a whole lot of remedies and processes and plans that reduce risk for both parties. And there may be a whole lot of other things that we could also look at in the review that said, yes, we've done some right things. We didn't get the outcome that we were after, but we're really after things that we can identify in this project that will help us in future projects, rather than a post-mortem on who did what when.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, well, we made a commitment to close the loop, particularly on the clock tower project. I think we've just got to, you know, now that we've made that commitment, we'll follow through on it, but we've got to make sure that it's a positive process, not a negative. You know, it's not about pointing fingers or finding blame. It's about improvement, continual improvement going forward. And that's up to us to drive that.
Yep. All right. So any further discussion? No other comments?
If
So
I could just, sorry,
yep.
Chair, just a response to councillors. I wouldn't want to do a review on every single project, because we do actually do a hell of a lot that you don't see. It sits in the background, and they run perfectly well. And some of them are relatively simple, straightforward, small, and having reviews as to what went well would just might be a bit more wasteful in terms of dollars. But some of the bigger ones, we could have a dollar point where it tips over it, and there is a percentage ratio that we could use for an improvement, and see if we could do that a little bit, and see if we can actually make some savings that would counter the amount that we're actually using, but not on every project.
So Dave, that was never my intention that it should be on every project, but I think we need to identify, you know, the significant projects. Now, what I mean by significant, it might be significant in terms of dollars, or it might be significant in terms of community interest. And it shouldn't be just on the projects that are perceived to have actually, there's been a problem. So I think, you know, I totally agree. You wouldn't want to do a review on your resale projects, for example. That would be completely dumb, because you do them every year. But it's the stuff that you don't do every year. It's the, and I don't know how many you've got and how many, you know, so to me, maybe that's something that you and Jeff could look at, and maybe Kelly, and come up with a bit of a criteria about these are the sort of projects that we would want to review so that have the learnings. And so we actually, when we're developing the budget, we actually allow for a review at the end of that project. You happy with that, Jeff?
Yep. Thank you.
Dave knows a few people who'd like a review of the resales, eh, Dave?
There might be one or two that would put their hand up for selected areas.
Right, back on track. Right, so we've got a suggestion for the modification of the recommendation. I think Robin is going to move that the recommendation is, one, we receive the report, that we, now correct me if I get this wrong, agree an independent review of the wastewater treatment on upgrade and clock tower earthquake strengthening projects as undertaken as set out above, full stop.
Oh.
And then the three is that the chief executive bring back to the next Audit and Risk Committee progress on those reports. And that then leaves it open to, you know, what has been done.
I'd just say progress on the review.
Progress on the review. Okay. So that's you're moving that. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Dale seconding that. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye or put your hand up.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you for that. Next item, we'll skip health and safety, and we'll go to 6.3 annual report timeline update. Kelly.
Thank you. So this report just outlines our key dates for the annual report for 30th of June 2021. The team has started to prepare the report, and we will be having Audit New Zealand plan to come on site 13th of September. the audit lasting 2 weeks, and then adoption of the annual report is planned for the council meeting on the 20th of October. So the report outlines some of the key kind of considerations around the annual report, particularly risk areas. No major changes from the annual report last year, no changes in significant accounting standards or our accounting policies. Other than that, I'll take the report as read.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Kelly? I think we formally need to blame Kelly for the lockdown because she didn't mention it formally in her report.
I did, sorry.
It's all right.
Philip, I think Rob has a question.
Yeah, I know. Yep. Thank you, Rob.
Sorry, was that me go?
Yes, you go. Yes.
Okay, 2 questions. The first one is just for clarity. During the LTP process, we were criticised for not using Magic to its full potential. So I was just asked after whether or not the financials for the annual report will be coming out of Magic or from some other place. And the second question was regarding the potable water and wastewater extraordinary expenses that we've had in the last year.
Sorry, I'm not hearing this. Can anyone else hear Rob?
I can, but he's a bit pinky and perky.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
let me just change. Let me see if I can change my microphone.
Sorry, Rob, that's me. My speakers seem to cut out periodically. I'm back now. Sorry about that. But I did miss a question.
Yep.
So the first question is regarding Magic. Are the financials for the annual report coming from Magic or from some other place? We were criticised for not using Magic to its full potential, so it'd be useful to know and maybe tell the story that we are using it, if we are. And the second question is the one I shared with you via email regarding the unbudgeted expenses for water and wastewater and whether or not those will be significant variances in the annual report, and whether we should, I guess, start telling that story early rather than wait till after the report's released.
Kelly, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we are using Magic to produce the financial statements. We will also still be cross-checking against the our spreadsheets just as a check as we progress to the use of Magic to produce the actual financial statements. The unbudgeted expenditure, so yes, there were some relatively significant amounts for both the E. coli issues and the ponds. The ponds not so much in the 2021 financial year, most of that will end up being in 2022, but they are unbudgeted items that it may be worth flagging up front, and I suppose the E. coli issue will be part of the story we tell in the annual report, as it is something significant that happened during the period. So in terms of, I think you said front footing it, Rob. Sorry, can I ask if you're thinking of that just being within the annual report or some information prior to the annual report? Is that what you were thinking?
I guess it was about being prepared and knowing ahead of time that this is coming, so that we can, I guess, all be on the same page, rather than it just be a couple of lines in the report. I guess it's just me trying to be ready in terms of community engagement and sort of knowing these things up front. So you've kind of answered my question, so I can look for details around that.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any other questions? Okay, I've got none. So we've got a recommendation on page 29 that we received report notes the proposed 2021 annual report timeline. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'll move that, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Seconded. Thank you, Robin. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item is our Treasury report. We've lost you again, Kelly. Still not there, Kelly.
You hear me?
Yep, that's better.
Sorry, it looks like it might be an ongoing issue, so just give me a yell. So this Treasury report is a new report we have brought to Audit and Risk, with the idea being that the Treasury function of Council does represent risk, particularly as our borrowings are increasing. And it looks as though interest rates are changing as well, are not going to stay as low as they have been. So we've set out the current position of our borrowings, and I note that we have moved to LGFA. We no longer have external borrowings with BNZ, which has meant that we're able to take advantage of the low interest rates offered through LGFA, with our average interest rate at the moment being 1.15%. Section 6 outlines compliance with our Treasury policy. Our Treasury policy is not hugely prescriptive in terms of percentages, but I have noted the key areas that it discusses, such as the interest rate exposure, which we consider when we're drawing down borrowings, our liquidity, our credit exposure, and our borrowing limits. And as you'll see, there are no red flags in those areas at this time. We're complying with our policy and quite comfortable in some of those, the actual prescribed limits around our borrowings. Our forecast position, I've noted, we do expect significant borrowings to fund capital projects this year. And one consideration I do want to flag is whether we need to think, well, we do need to think about, Council needs to consider whether to or when to become a guarantor for our GFA. So at the moment, Council is not a guarantor, but once borrowings of $20 million are reached, Council must become a guarantor, otherwise look to borrow through another external party, a bank, above that amount rather than through our GFA. So I understand that was considered a couple of years ago when the Council joined our GFA, and at the time it was decided that Council would not become a guarantor. So that may be something Council wishes to revisit. I will take the rest of the report as read. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, Robin? And then Greg?
So following on around the guarantor process, obviously this is something that we do need to consider, and this will be something that we can workshop as a full council. And I think you've mentioned before there's somebody from LGFA that actually may be able to come in and talk to us and give us the information that we require to make the decisions.
That's right. Our GFA have offered, Andrew is happy to come and speak to Council to explain the process of becoming a guarantor and the risks involved and also the benefits. So we could absolutely set up a workshop for Council to be provided with some more information.
Yeah, thank you, because I think it's really important that we're all well informed before we do need to make any decisions, but it obviously is something that we do, it's very high on the radar for us as a council to consider.
Greg?
Yeah, I just want to commend the report. This is a great addition to the audit and risk agenda, and the way it's formatted and how clear it is, I think is great. And for a first cut at it, I think it's fantastic. And yeah, I agree with the comments. We seriously need to look at revisiting being a guarantor with the LGFA. It's huge advantages there.
Yeah. I've got Dale then Rob. You're on mute, Dale.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I agree. It's a very good report. I just hope some of the criticisers out there amongst the general public read this report as well, because there's some real nuggets in there. The 1.15% borrowing is extremely competitive. Doesn't matter where you sit, and also the fact that our forecast debt of 18 million is well within our limits. So across the board, this council is performing extremely credibly, and whether some people want to acknowledge that or not, reports like this that come forward in these public committee meetings help tell the real story and provide the facts when some people would prefer to have the emotion. So well done, Kelly. I thought it was very good. Yeah, just in terms of being guarantor, I was with a council some years ago that went through this process, and there was discussion around the risk of if a large authority defaulted, like in Auckland or something like that. But the reality is, and I'm sure a workshop with LGFA will cover all that, but there's so much protection around councils being underwritten by ratepayers and things like that, that I know when we went through it, the benefits of the borrowing rates and being part of LGFA far outweighed the potential risks. But yeah, I look forward to having a workshop on that for sure. So well done, Kelly. Awesome. Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, my thunder's been stolen a little bit there by Greg and by Dale, but I guess I want to just make sure that add my voice to the commendation of Kelly in this report. To me, it's excellent. It speaks directly to some of the criticisms we had during the LTP submission process. When I think back to when Phoebe abandoned us and went to Australia, we were worried if we would ever get someone as good as Phoebe back into the finance role. I'm absolutely comfortable that we've got a Phoebe plus. So Kelly, very, very well done, and I look forward to further iterations of this report.
Yeah, you're gone again, Kelly. I like the report, and I'm just adding to. I do like the heads up. It's actually saying is particularly that Garen looking forward, saying what are the issues that we need to consider going forward. I think that's a useful discussion in terms of not only the where we are now, but I think the report needs to be saying is what are the issues that we're going to face in 12 to 3 years ahead. So we're actually forward looking. I mean, I don't want to knock the accountants in the room because I am one, but accountants have got this perception that we always look backwards. I think we looking forward with Treasury is absolutely about managing risk, about what's on the horizon, what's coming that could actually impact or benefit us. And the bit with the guarantor is, yes, there is a small interest saving if we become a guarantor. It's not dramatic, but it is there. So well done, Kelly. So any further discussion, comments?
I'll move.
So Dale's moving the report. Do I have a seconder? I think Robin by a whisker. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Our next item is progress on audit recommendations, and that's Kelly again. And I think you've gone silent on us again, Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you can now. Yep.
Okay, I have to press the button every now and then by the looks of it. Okay, thank you. So at the last audit and risk meeting, the committee requested a standing report to be brought back showing progress against audit recommendations. So this report reports back on the recommendations made by audit during the 2020 audit. They have completed their 2021 interim audit, but we do not have the report back just yet. So we don't have any new recommendations to add from what was in the report, what was in the management report that was taken to the committee last time. So we have made some good progress. You'll see in the appendix of colour-coded green to show where I believe we've cleared the issues, which audit should be able to confirm in the next audit. yellow where we're in progress, and then red there are a couple we have not yet started, either due to the timing or because we need to consider weighing up the benefits from implementation to the costs. There was one, can I just note, related to, in the appendix, the sensitive expenditure policy. I have noted that one is cleared, but that should actually be in progress. So we have been updating the policy, but it does need to come back to the Policy and Strategy Committee for adoption.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Greg and then Robin, I think.
Yeah, a good report. Thank you, Kelly. Just a question to do with the building consent, the number of days. I see in the report that it says that just the issues with the MAGI system and calculating consent days. And we're quite reliant on the MAGI system. So could you explain why we've had to go to the GoGet system for counting those days?
Sure. So those two systems, we were using them both anyway. So I think GoGet one isn't new. But the issue with the MAGIC system, I believe, was the way that it's calculating the first day when the consent's received, whereas under the legislation, you're supposed to count from the next working day. So the way the system was set up was counting that additional day, which throws the calculation out.
Okay, thank you. So using the GoGet system, it works quite well in relation to the MAGI system. As far as transferring information.
Right. We're happy with that. The GoGet system is working correctly, and Audit will likely review it during the next year's interim audit after it's been in place for some time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Robin?
I'd just like to say great report again, and having the colour coding makes it so much easier for it to just stand out what has been achieved, and to congratulate you and your team on the progress that you're making with working your way through the recommendation. So well done, guys.
Thank you, Robin.
Robin, stop stealing everyone's thunder that you just stole mine then about the colour coding. I like colouring in. The question for me is, Kelly, I think just an addition, suggestion and improvement. I think it would be useful if you could actually add another column, particularly for the items that are not started, is potentially a due date. So, for example, you're not going to do a revaluation until 2023. So the urgency, you would actually have estimated completion will be 2023. So so we can actually say, oh, yes, it's not started, but it's not due until 2023, no problem. But if it's not started and due by the end of this calendar year, we might actually have a bit more of an issue that we might want to quiz a bit more. And I think just in terms of that, scanning would be just adding a bit more information.
Absolutely.
Yep, thank you. Good. Yep, I like these reports. Also, just come to me is when I have seen in other reports, because we're going to see this as a standard report, what would be good if we could actually highlight what has actually changed, either by using bold or a different colour font from the report, so we can actually see the progress each quarter would be useful, particularly for those that you're actually currently working on.
Sure. I can do that.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just lost my mouse. There it is. So a lot of so you're comfortable where we're tracking, Kelly?
Yes, I am. Yeah, with me coming on board and shuffling around some duties, we've been able to increase some things like segregation of duties. So that's where, you have one staff member completing an activity and another independent staff member reviewing. So it's just about bedding in some of those and I suppose having a backup in place for when people do leave. We've just had one of our finance team retire. So I'm happy with the progress we're making. It's something that is ongoing. but we are getting there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, therefore, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 35. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Dale. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Our next item is risk register update. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The regular risk register update, and I'll just invite any comments or questions from the councillors.
Any comments, questions? Yeah, Rob?
So I've spent a bit of time in the council offices recently since the Matarawa Road quarry investigation, and one of the things I noticed in there, which I knew about but perhaps hadn't seen practically, is the overcrowding and some of the clutter in the main council building. We've been talking about the need to address this in terms of building a new building, but it's not really reflected in the risk register as a risk and why we should solve it. I don't know whether it fits into the health and safety, or possibly loss of key employees, or maybe unsafe buildings. But I think the adequacy of that space does affect us, and it does present a risk. If people don't feel comfortable in that space working, then they might leave. If there's an accident or a reason to leave it quickly, then it could, they may not get out as quickly as they ought to. I just wonder if what the other people's comments are as to whether or not that should be included in our risk register.
Comment from either Jeff or Dave?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor, I think you've just seen the main office, which compared to the event centre staff is in pure luxury for space-wise. I think it could go under the staff wellbeing.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Dave. I think you've nailed it, Rob, with regards to the amount of clutter, and walking in with a fresh pair of eyes and seeing a number of staff that are, fairly close together and crowded with a lot of paper, and in some cases electronic equipment. It's certainly something that I'd like to tidy up, but I think the staff wellbeing is probably the place to put it. In terms of managing risk, I can see there is risk, but it may be better in the health and safety and staff wellbeing side of things.
Okay, you noted and probably updated as part of the next report.
I will, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Pleased to see we've got our ICP risks being changed and a few other changes to the risk register, and I think that's the proof of the pudding that we're actually monitoring our risks. Thank you, Dave and team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was avoiding discussing those in too much detail because it was over my head with the IT.
Yeah, no, and also thank you for just again, putting the changes in red. I think that's very useful. So, any further discussion? Questions? So, do I have a mover for the recommendation on page 48? Thank you, Robin. Seconded, Greg. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Our next item is the Chief Executive's key result area. I think this is, my understanding is that this has been well workshopped with council, and welcome back, Jerry. I think you had some other.
Thank you. Yes, Kimi koutou katoa, everyone. Apologies for my lateness to the meeting, so I appreciate the national situation that I've just been in, and I can give you a briefing on that after this.
Yep.
Just to turn to this report firstly, as you said, but there has been workshops. I just want to point out just a typo that I have noticed under the discussion. So where we talked about the KRAs being is quantitative measures. It does say qualitative measures in the report, but it should be quantitative measures. So we try as much as possible to make measures that are able to be quantitatively identified and measured. However, in some cases, you'll know that they need to be based on some opinion or feedback or responses in a qualitative nature. So just to clarify that. I think everything else is pretty straightforward, but just noting we've included a 6-month review and a 12-month review period. That's not to say that all the way through the 12-month period
Can't hear you, Jerry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there's a lot of background, like birds chirping.
Oh, I can't hear them. Sorry, can you hear me now? Do I need to repeat something?
Just that last little bit.
Oh, okay. Just in terms of the review period, so we've placed in a 6 and a 12-month period, but that doesn't preclude those regular informal meetings that will happen along the way as well. I'm happy to take any questions, or I'm not sure, Robert, if you wanted to add anything.
You faded out again there, Jerry, towards the end. I think just put your mic a little bit closer to your mouth might help. I think we're picking up probably some static from the computer somewhere. I think those are the birds chirping. That's better. Yep.
Okay, so sorry, just repeating the review, noting the review period.
Yep.
In there, and not sure if Robin, you wanted to add
Yeah, it's been well workshopped, and we've landed in the right place. Now we can just move forward and make it happen, make the magic happen.
Okay, thank you for that. I just got one minor suggestion on page 62. We talk about it's the 3rd paragraph from the bottom, strategy, planning and reporting. My suggestion is, present an issues and strategy paper to council within 90 days. I would actually say immediately following the first 90 days. It's just because I would expect that Jeff would spend the first 3 months looking at the issues, then reporting back, not reporting back within the 90 days, because technically he could do that now. And that I don't think was the intent of that particular clause. If everyone's comfortable with that, particularly the elected members. People comfortable?
Happy to take your advice on that.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So Dale, I think you probably want to move the recommendations. Thank you. And I'll just suggest with minor amendment, just so we capture that last amendment. So you, Dale's moved that. Greg will second it. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Philip,
aye. Sorry, yep, carry on, Dale.
I was just wondering if, Greg, do you want to move it and I'll second it? Would you prefer that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dale. That would be great, actually. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's do that, eh?
Okay,
yeah.
noted.
And just before I do that, I just want to appreciate the process that we've gone through with everyone to get to the stage with these KPAs, and also bringing you and Jeff too, and we're placed very well to go forward. So, yep, so I'd love to move. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. 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 Carried. Now, next item is our late item on the Three Waters update review. Dave.
Philip, maybe while Jerry's here, just because
Yeah.
you may
Oh,
need
sorry.
to dive
Sorry.
off again,
Thank
we
you.
might need to do the other.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I said, you perform your deputy chair skills so well. Thank you, Jerry. I did overlook that. So if we go back to page 16 on the agenda, your health and safety report, Jerry.
Thank you. The report's pretty straightforward, but just to highlight 3 things. So firstly, the WorkSafe survey that we've done, just to highlight, we found that pretty encouraging in terms of where we're at. So we're at that performing level, but certainly we have things that we want to focus on and move forward with, and staff engagement is still one of those focus areas. So pretty happy with where we're at with that. Secondly, we're just going to start a campaign with our team around driver and vehicle safety, just in the way it is, so just to highlight for our particular operational staff. And then lastly, if you'll note the increase in incidents. So on the one hand, we're really pleased that we're starting to get, we feel those reports coming in really well. Secondly, just to assure you in terms of the minor injury incidents, that they are very minor in terms of slipping or cutting, or I can give you the specifics if you like. I've got Jodie sitting in the background if you want to go. But just to assure you, they are relatively minor. But some of those incidents highlighted again by the wind conditions. So we have some slips and falls due to so yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Jerry? I've just got one. It's probably and then Rob, but just on page 20, you've got, and this is a good news, you've actually got staff attend the contractor management training, and you're looking at trialing an app with your phones to record health and safety interactions and conversations with contractors. That's good, and monitoring. So can you just give us a bit of an update where you've got with that? What's the time frame for the rollout?
So it has been underway. It is going. As I said, in terms of staff engagement, it's still a process of getting staff familiar to use it. It's very easy. We're trying to, as with all our reporting techniques, make the way of reporting as easy as possible for our team. So some are using it really well, and some are still preferring the manual systems of writing things down. So we're just engagement with that. Jodie, I'm not sure, do you want to give any more about the app specifically?
No, that's fine. That's good.
Okay.
That's maybe you could give us a demo once we're back in level 1.
Sure.
Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Jerry, the Argus risk points reporting for our drivers, Carterton always seems to come up looking really, really good, like a long way below the industry average. Are we really that exceptional, or is there perhaps a subgroup of the industry, councils and DHBs that we could compare ourselves with, who are probably more conservative drivers, where we might be able to sort of demonstrate that we could improve? At the moment, it looks like we're awesome and don't need to do anything in that space. So that was my first question. And the second question is regarding the biggest safety risks under behaviour. I just wondered where the white ribbon campaign is at the moment. And I was going to suggest that the event centres got yes, yes, yes as a thing coming up for the school kids around consent and relationships and stuff. And there might be an opportunity for the council to sort of, present some white ribbon type stuff around that event, because it kind of fits, particularly the evening session where there's going to be caregivers and parents and perhaps older siblings coming along to see it. So yeah, a couple of things to think about.
Yeah, no, sure. So to your first point, the Argus, yeah, it's a standard reporting and platform that we use to record. The reason I took it out of these reports was precisely for what you talked about, Rob, that every reporting we were well under, and it didn't really seem to reflect too much of the accuracy. in terms of this week campaign that we're going to do with our teams, we are looking at some overspeed reporting that we've had on specific vehicles. So we are talking to our teams specifically around. So I mean, it's not excessive and it's not dangerous, or we need to highlight as a major risk, but where some of the overspeed has been is on our fringes from 70 k's into 50 k's, for example, 100 k's into 70 k's. So it's those change of speed zones where we're seeing some overspeed. So we're going to do some engagement and education around just being mindful of that, particularly being in council vehicles. In terms of trying to compare with other maybe more relevant industries, I can certainly have a look into that and see if we can do something in that space. The white ribbon, so yeah, any opportunity is a great opportunity. So we still have our white ribbon ambassadors, so that's Clint Thompson internally for our staff. He does a great job of not only white ribbon, but he's also involved in some other similar for example, which is the right against suicide. So very strong in leading that. And externally, we've got Russell, who we've used as our community champion in the white ribbon space. So normally around the white ribbon time is when we kind of see a little bit of highlighting and promotion of that. But absolutely any opportunity that we use, and UCCS could
If I may, Phil,
absolutely,
can I
Jeff.
just follow up on Rob's question with regards comparing to other councils, and without naming other councils, I can say that I have seen Argus reporting from some other entities, and that reporting, we were receiving 5 pages of overspeed reports every week. And in some cases, those overspeed reports were sort of 30 kilometres an hour overspeed. I think the top one I had was 128 kilometres an hour in a council marked vehicle. So what I have seen here just in the short time that I've been here is, you know, you should actually take credit from the fact that the Argus reporting you're getting is actually a fair reflection of the performance of the team, because from what I've seen, there's some pretty tragic driving out there from other councils and other entities. So yeah, I'd take comfort from the fact that our Argus reporting is fairly accurate, and we are pretty good. There's always things we can do better, and Jerry's onto that. But yeah, I think we're at a good place.
For my sins, I actually drove a council vehicle that actually belonged to another local authority when I was doing some work for them earlier in the month. They gave it to me for a day and a half, which was very kind. And they actually had some tracking on it. And this one actually gave a report on screen at the end of each trip to say how well you actually did for that trip on screen, which I thought encouraged driver behaviour. See, the driver got immediate feedback in terms of their feedback, and I should note that I actually got 100% pass. I took photographic evidence of that, and I'll show you that when I'm next on site. But again, you're right, Rob. You know, you've got to be. There's always room for improvement, but I do take heart from Jeff's comments that there are plenty of poor drivers out there in the council vehicles. Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments on that report? So if we go to page 26, we've got a recommendation there. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you. Moved Robin. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Dale. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Our last item is our late item. Welcome back to the screen, Dave. You disappeared for a few minutes. Your report on the Three Waters update.
Thank you. So I think there's probably just a few things to note on the Three Waters update is one is that it's not overly clear as to what we've been asked from council's point of view, from central government. We are sharing and talking about it, the information we are given as we are given it. We don't have anything additional. The officers or councillors are not given anything additional to what the general public have access to. We just in a position where we have to discuss things and questions do arise. I think if you there is on item 3 on the report, and that talks about what has been asked for in a general sense to fully understand the proposal and how it affects the local authority. I think that's what we've been talking about from the moment the Three Waters review has been announced. So there's no real difference. We're just trying to narrow it down in terms of actuals of what may be happening. I think also just to note that there are no formal decisions that are required from council in the questions that are asked to DIA. There are plenty of questions that we need to be asking, and we will feed back to central government, but no decision making. But I'm happy to take any questions if there are any questions from councillors.
Any questions? Greg?
Yeah, not so much a question, but just the way we've been working as a council and collectively with our neighbours is reflected in how we see the importance of this, and also the messaging that we're giving our community in respect that we're using these 8 weeks responsibly, and we're not making any decisions, and if we are going to make a decision, we will be consulting with the community eventually. But yeah, just how the importance of this, and just yeah, it's really good to be able to identify this at the Ordinary meeting. Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I wanted to, this week I've been chatting with both community and with a councillor from another district, another territorial authority. And I just want to commend Dave and Elisa on the job they're doing in providing both councillors and the community with information on this. In the discussion, particularly with the other councillor, I felt a lot more informed and comfortable talking about the stuff than I felt they did. So I think the clarity that you're adding by presenting it the way you're presenting it, I think is really, really useful to me as a councillor. So thanks, Dave, and thanks, Elisa, for the messaging that we're putting out in the community.
Don't forget, this is a Kelly appreciation show, and she should not be gone unnoticed.
Oh. Any other comments? I've got a couple of comments. I think I've got some major concern, not necessarily for the council per se, but for our residents and ratepayers. To me, there are a whole lot of very broad assumptions, and that's probably being a bit nice in terms of the benefits of the water reform. I'm not saying water reform is not required at all, but what I'm saying is that I think the benefits have been oversold and the risks have been underplayed. And I think that's a role for the council to say, what are the risks for not necessarily the council, but our community going forward? And how is government going to consider those risks for the community? And my biggest, if we're talking about the broad assumptions, if you look at the dashboard and the formula that they have arrived at to say, is there going to be significant savings for everybody? It's saying is there's going to be a 2% per annum assumption of efficiencies every year. So my question is, that assumes that we're going to have efficiencies from day one, which to me is totally unrealistic. So what the question I would be asking is government is what sensitivity have they actually done on those very broad assumptions, and what are the risks of those assumptions actually being significantly wrong, and what does that actually mean for our community in terms of affordability? You know, that's the sort of questions that we should actually be asking on behalf of the community, just from a pure financial perspective. The other question that I have is, we know that for a long period of time we're going to have constrained resources. They're assuming that we've got an unconstrained resource from day one. So what sensitivity have they done about using the existing resources, and what does that actually mean for our community, particularly the smaller communities, whereas there will be pressure from the larger communities to resolve their issues with limited resources before the smaller communities get their turn. So those are the sort of things that I would be challenging government in terms of the questions that I would be asking. And the big risk is, while they're talking about forming transition groups, how effective will those transitions actually be for your community? I don't know if anyone's got any comments to make on those.
Yeah, I can make a comment, Philip. We're going through that process of workshopping and discussing all those, and I intend that it'll be exhaustive by the time that we're ready to feed back to central government. But those are the things that we're looking at, and with a raft of others, and and that over that 30-year window. So you've highlighted a couple of those concerns, but we're well aware how complex this is, and so thank you for highlighting it. But I don't know if any of the other elected members want to comment.
No, my view is this is being portrayed as a very simple exercise by central government and the officials in public, but I think it's horrendously complicated. It's going to tie your staff up in knots for quite some time, and that's the big risk for the council. Rob?
I wasn't going to add, but I will. One of the risks, I guess it's a reputational risk for the council, and some of what the government's saying is it's asking us to make considerations with respect to the structure of local government and the benefit or disbenefit to councils, whereas we also need to consider the benefits and disbenefits to the ratepayers, to the individuals out in the community. And some of the rhetoric from the government is not going to that level. So the affordability for the end user is not something that we as councils are being asked about, but it does need to be included in the discussion, because ultimately we advocate for our ratepayers and we need to represent their concerns back through LGNZ back up to central government. So it's just an area of risk where if we don't represent their views, they will be seen as abandoning them, and we don't want that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, in that case, the recommendation is on page 8 that we receive the report. Can I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Greg. For a seconder, Robin. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. That concludes the meeting, and Robin, would you like to undertake the closing karakia, please?
Sure. Kia tau ki a tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō a tātou ariki a ihu karaiti, me te aroa o te atua, me te whiwhina tahitana ki te waroa tapu, aki, 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 amene.
Thank you everyone for your spirited bidding. Please stay safe in your little bubbles, and hopefully we might see you in person in November. We don't want to do and New South Wales.
Thanks a lot, Philip.
Thank you.
Just while you're all still penciled and handy, I don't know if
Thank you.
like just a quick update.
Thank you, Jerry.
On the situation. So I've been on a call this morning, a national call. So just to give you some highlights, so the representative from Ministry of Health. So it appears like we've got 5, in total first thing this morning, but there are a couple of others that they feel they've identified on top of that. So it's rapidly increasing. They are getting contact tracing and testing underway at Mark 5C. The genome sequencing has confirmed that it is Delta, but hasn't connected the first case to any existing cases, so they still don't know where it's come from at this stage. There's a rapid number of increased locations of interest as well, so those will be continually updated on the COVID website, and that they're setting up more pop-up centres as well. The main takeaway for today is mask wearing. It's not going to be made mandatory so they can legally do so in some time, but really an emphasis on leaving the house, you must wear a mask. So whether it's mandatory or not, the messaging will be responsible as soon as we walk out the door to be wearing masks. Contagiousness of the Delta. I'll put some comms out sort of in terms of written, so you've got it there, but yeah, at 1 o'clock, the situation is probably going to be getting worse rather than better at this stage. Police aren't going to be taking any enforcement action, but they will be more vigilant than they were in the last lockdown. So they won't be taking enforcement action in the first 48 hours, so they're allowing people to return where they need to be. My husband's picking up my daughter who's just flown back from Dunedin as we speak. So at this stage, my personal opinion is the 3 days is probably looking longer than 3 days. So yeah, this is very much wait and see.
Thank you for that, Jerry. All right. Thank you very much. No other comments, questions? All right.
Thanks for the update, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.